My live cast. And I've got a special guest today, my care aide Chrissy, who we're going to talk about disabilities. So while I'm talking to her about disabilities, I'm just going to drive around in my little Peugeot and get some skill points. So, Chrissy, how long have you been a CNA? Okay, so in that 15 years, have you taken care of a lot of people with handicaps? Yeah. Yeah, you probably know that about a quarter of people in the United States have a handicap. So if you count 4 people, one person has a handicap. It may be a mental handicap, it may be a physical handicap, but it's very common in this country to have handicaps. But yet, we with handicaps tend to hide it. We want to appear normal, and we have struggles to appear normal. So part of what my channel is all about is to talk about disabilities and let people know it's okay to reveal that you have handicaps because it's more common than you think. So, Chrissy, with all of your experience, what would you think is the common denominator with all handicaps? What would you think is the struggle that all people with handicaps have in common, whether they are a mental illness or a physical illness? You think a lot of people just are in denial and they don't accept it, and that's a good point. That's something that I hadn't really thought about, but yeah, for years I was just trying to pretend I was normal, and I've been handicapped since childhood. I would limp a lot. I had a lot of arthritis. I was actually on 5 aspirins 4 times a day at 14. So it was very hard for me to keep up in PE. It was nearly impossible. And people were wondering why in the world I was wheezing when they weren't. And you know, people didn't really understand what a struggle it was for me, and I was trying to hide it. I wasn't really, and if somebody mentioned, well, you're limping, and I'm like, well, I have arthritis, and it's like, oh, that's terrible. But they didn't treat me any differently. I didn't want to be treated differently, but on the other hand, I wanted some acknowledgement that I was having more trouble than other people, and I often felt frustrated because teachers expected the same of me as they did everybody else. And even though I didn't have a diagnosis at the time except arthritis at 14, I had a lot of problems from, say, age 7. I would have horrible leg cramps when I was trying to go to sleep at night. And sometimes I'd cry with that, it was so bad. And Mama said, oh, it's just growing pains, you'll grow out of it. Well, I didn't grow out of it, folks. I still have a lot of leg pains and other pains, and I've gotten injuries from lifting heavy things at work. I was never on workman's comp or anything, but I still have spinal degeneration. I have severe spinal degeneration in my lower back and moderate in my neck. And I think a lot of it was from trying to lift things that were just way too heavy for me. I was a taxi driver once, and I was having to lift 110-pound boxes of blood from the hand truck into the trunk of the car by myself. So it was a big deal when I would pick these up at they would come through Delta Dash or United Sprint. The employees were not allowed to lift it into the car for me, so I had to lift it myself. And I was a size 12 back then. I was skinny. I was not getting enough food. And, when you have malnutrition, you're going to have worse problems than it. Anyway, I think most of my back problems came from that. So, your husband has back problems. Could you talk a little bit about how that affects his work without giving details of his work or anything?
He has a double disc back fusion. He had a double disc back fusion years ago, and what that does is it fuses the little knobs in your back to where a percentage or a part of your back does not bend.
Right.
So that part of his back does not bend, and therefore it's anything that jars him, anything that shakes, anything that instead of bending, he has to stoop. It limits him to what he is able to do.
And that would hurt other muscles, right?
Oh yeah, because the other places of the body compensate for the places that can't move.
Yeah, so if you've got a part of the body that can't move, the other muscles around that part of the body have to work harder. So it adds up to more pain. So you would think they had to limit his function. And he has more pain because it's not the same as the normal vertebrae in the back. It's a lot different. So it does have its effects. So the next time you talk to somebody who's had back surgery, maybe you should ask them, do you have more pain after your back surgery? And probably a lot of them will say, yeah, but I can do more than I could. And I'm at less risk of injuring my spinal cord and becoming paralyzed, but still there are trade-offs to that, and there's a lot more pain involved. And pain is one of those things that you can take pain meds, but you still feel tired. And a lot of pain meds will make you feel tired anyway. So you've got the double whammy if you're on pain meds, that not only are you tired from the pain, but you're also tired from the pain medicine. So it's, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You can take pain meds, and they do help the pain, but, they might have other side effects, like oxycodone can make you very nauseated. You can actually be getting physically ill with that. So it's not a picnic. So, if you're an employer and you are employing people at risk of back injuries, you really need to be aware that there are ways to prevent back injuries, like making your employees wear a back brace. Would you comment on that? Would a back brace have saved your husband from surgery?
Probably not, because he had degenerative disc also.
Oh.
He worked at a young age. He started working when he was a child, 7, 8, and he's had a lot of jobs that are very physically demanding.
Wow.
So he really, I don't know if that would have really helped per se, because
wow.
He was so young. He was working, before he was even grown.
And we know now that children should never lift more than 10% of their body weight. So if you have a 100-pound child, they should not be lifting more than 10 pounds. And a gallon of milk can weigh 10 pounds, right?
Just like a big bag. Big bag, like 20, 25 pounds.
Yeah.
Easy.
For a while before schools went electronic with textbooks, doctors, pediatricians were seeing children with stooped backs like slaves used to have, the kind of injuries that they had from lifting things that were too heavy for their bodies. So, that's something to realize. When I was a kid, I'd lift heavy things for adults and not think a thing about it. And Mama warned me, because she had back surgery. She had a tumor in her hip, and she actually got paralyzed from the waist down. She had to have surgery, and they didn't know what was causing it. It turned out it was a tumor in her hip that grew into her tailbone. So they had to scoop out her tailbone. So for the rest of her life, she was terrified that she would fall and hit that tailbone and crack it. And she had a lot of pain. She could do more things. She ended up not being paralyzed after the surgery, but she had a lot of back pain for the rest of her life. So, back surgery is not a picnic.
Fusion back surgeries are the most painful surgery a body can ever endure.
Wow, I can imagine, because you have to pretty much wear a body cast, don't you? No?
You don't. It's just very, very painful, and you're walking like Frankenstein kind of. But the physical therapy was very, very good. He wasn't ready for it at the time, but the same day the physical therapy came in after his surgery and got him up and started walking him. And at the time, he could have died pretty much. But
wow.
With the pain, but he's glad, it's over, and he went through it, and he did very well, but it's very, very, very
You said he could have died from the pain.
yes.
Pain can put you into shock, so if pain is severe enough, it can kill you. A lot of people aren't aware of that. So that's why it's so important to, when someone has surgery or when someone is in the hospital and after an accident, it's very important to control that pain, because pain can make you go into shock, and that's a condition. How would you explain shock?
I don't really know. I haven't ever been in that situation or known anybody that has went into shock. So I don't really know that.
Well, Mommy used to tell me that a person in shock, their body temperature drops, and the internal organs actually begin to shut down. So you are very familiar with that because you've taken care of dying people. What happens when the organs shut down? Okay, so
shock is a little bit different from the dying process.
Right. Of course, because it's reversible. You just give the person fluids and keep them warm. Of course, you don't want to give them fluids if they've got a suspected head injury. That's what happened to my best friend. She was in a bicycle accident, and somehow she made it to a nearby hospital and walked in the emergency room. And there was a practical nurse there that fed her. And she had a severe brain fracture, and you're not supposed to feed people with a head injury, and she did. And all of the becoming violently ill made her a lot worse. So she recovered from that, but it had lifelong effects. So, you want to be careful to, ask somebody, if you're around somebody and they have just had a bad accident, call 911 and let them advise you. They have access to doctors. They'll put you in touch with somebody while the ambulance is on the way. They'll relay messages. So definitely, listen to medical people, because you can make an injury a lot worse by trying to do something kind. It's always okay to put a blanket on them, keep them warm. But yeah, you don't want to give them anything by mouth if you suspect a head injury or a spinal injury. You want to wait until the ambulance comes. Let the medical people do their job. I was in an accident one time, and I was sitting in the left lane and somebody was turning left ahead of me. It was pouring down rain, and traffic was going way too fast. The speed limit was 45 and everybody was going about 55 or 60. And this person in this very old car pulled up behind me, and he got impatient. He was in what I call a land yacht, very old Cadillac. So he pulled out to go around me. When he did, a 2-ton carpet truck ran into him. It ran into me. The land yacht ran into me, turned my car around 180 degrees, so I was facing this way. So here I was, in the wrong lane, facing the wrong way. And we waited for the police to come. Well, the impact of that crash threw off my glasses, and I couldn't see without my glasses. I had just taken a first aid course because I was a Girl Scout leader, and I was on my way to a Girl Scout leader training, as a matter of fact. And so I knew first aid, and I kept people would come and say, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I think so." And, "Oh, can you help me find my glasses?" And they're already gone. So I felt around, and it was getting dark because this happened right at sunset. So I was feeling around in the dark for my glasses, and I finally found them. And then I went over to the other car, and the guy with the land yacht had an elderly mother in the front seat, and he was pulling her head back and forth and saying, "Are you okay, Mom? Talk to me." And it's like, I'm saying, "You don't want to move her head. She might have a head injury." And he's like, "Oh, she's this way all the time." And I'm like, you want to be extra careful. And finally the ambulance got there, and they put her on a body board and strapped her neck, So he did the wrong thing by moving her head around. You don't do that after an accident. And my car was drivable, but it was tilted. It sprung the frame on it. I was terrified to drive it, and I was shaking. Oh, after a wreck, it's just a shock to be in a wreck, and, I was really not feeling like I was in any shape to drive, but I did drive home, and bad experience. So, car wrecks are no fun. But that was my only major wreck in 25 years of driving, or maybe 35 years of driving. And I'm usually a careful driver. In this game, I'm a little reckless. I would never be going around chewing up guardrails on Interstate 75. But in case you're just joining us, we are talking about handicaps, and I've got Chrissy, who is my certified nursing assistant. She comes in 5 days a week to take care of me. And she helps me do things that are normal parts of daily living called ADLs. So activities of daily living are things like brushing your teeth, washing your face, taking a bath, just normal things that you would do. And I have to have help with all that. So Chrissy will bring me my toothbrush and a cup of water, and I put a cloth here to protect my clothing, and I brush my teeth in bed. This is a normal part of my handicapped life. But, you don't think about that. I can't stand up for more than maybe 30 seconds at a time without feeling very sick. So it's hard for me to stand at the sink in the bathroom for 2 minutes while I'm brushing my teeth. So Chrissy helps me brush my teeth, and she helps me with my back. I can pretty much do everything except scrub my back. So she scrubs my back and does a very good job at it. And that's all I'm going to say about bathroom stuff here, because I want to keep my channel E for everyone. But just suffice it to say that we handicapped people have trials that you might not think we have to go through. So the purpose of my channel and my live stream is to promote understanding of handicapped people. Sorry, NPC. There's nobody in that car. That's a non-player character. So that drive-a-car is that's actually not a drive-a-car. There's a difference between just the cars that just go down the road, and drive-a-cars only appear either in races or in when you're not online. I am on online play, so anybody with a number above their heads, that's an actual player. But the cars going along the road, these are NPCs, so if I wanted to cause some chaos, I could just come out here on the wrong side of the road. We're in England, so this is the wrong side of the road. I can make him go in the other direction. And after a minute, he'll just go in the other direction. And this guy is stopping. That's another non-player character. So the AI is kind of going, okay, there's an obstacle in my way. What do I do? I can just hold up traffic. I would not do this in real life. So here comes the traffic, and some of them are going around me, and these AIs are going, okay, what do I do? There's an obstacle that's not supposed to be here. And of course, I'm not going to do this for too long, because it's going to mess up the gameplay, and that non-player character is still sitting there. The AI is going, okay, I have an obstacle. What do I do? The obstacle is a fence, so maybe I should remove the obstacle. Oh, hi. Okay, so I'll remove the obstacle so that they can go. So if I take this fence down, maybe the AI will decide, oh, I can go now. I'll take down a little more fence to help him out there. And get skill points for my car while I'm doing it. Now let's see if the NPC will move. You're still sitting there. Artificial intelligence is fascinating. But getting back to the subject of handicaps, as people age, they gain handicaps. If you live long enough, you probably will get a handicap. Would you agree with that statement, Chrissy? So what would your advice be to a family who maybe grandma had a stroke or had a car accident, maybe head injuries? What would you suggest that the family do to try to understand that the person's not the same now and some things are different? What would your advice be to them?
They could visit nursing homes and talk to people. you don't have, well, nowadays, you know, you kind of have to be careful of where you're going and all that, but you can volunteer in nursing homes, education online, you know, go to doctors. The more people you talk to, the better off you're going to be. Just don't think you're the only one that, you know, goes through it, because there's a lot of people that go through it.
Yeah. So if you want more information, cdc.gov is a very good place for anything concerning hygiene, how to, you know, what you need to do to keep the area sanitary and how to deal with that. The National Institutes of Health.gov has articles on every medical condition known to man, then some. So you can read up on the diagnoses that your person has and learn more about their condition. So there are sources like that. And of course, any literature your doctor gives you, it's good to read through that. I know it may be dry and you may not want to face that, but it's really good to read the literature they give you and try to fight that fear, because it's just natural when you find out that someone is not going to be the same now, that there is a life change and maybe they're disabled now where they weren't, or maybe they've got worse disabilities now than they already had. It's always grief, and grief has stages, and the first stage of grief is denial. So you just want to pretend it didn't happen. This is the body's protective mechanism that helps you to cope so you don't go into shock. You know, if you find out somebody very close to you has died, one of my sister's friends actually went into shock. Her husband, she was newlywed, he died in a car accident. And she actually had to go to the hospital because she went into shock. It was such a tremendous blow to her. I can't imagine being newly married and getting that kind of news. But you want to understand that it's natural to feel this denial, this wanting to just not believe it. But you have to fight against that, because it will work against you if you're trying to do the best for your handicapped person. You want to know a little bit about what their limitations are now, and don't try to encourage them to do things their doctors are telling them not to do. You know, you need to listen to the doctors and nurses and CNAs and people around you that maybe you haven't had much contact with them before, and all of a sudden you've got a handicapped person in your life and you're having to learn a whole bunch of stuff. It can be overwhelming. But, you know, if you're in that boat, be nice to yourself. You know, just give yourself a little time. But do make some time every day to read some of the literature that you've been given, and go online and learn a little bit about what these new handicaps are and what they mean for your beloved person.
You can also go through the therapies with them. Because a lot of the times when they do have accidents, they go through physical therapy or occupational therapy. And it's good to be involved, so that way you know what you can do, what is expected, and know that they can heal, not completely for some people, and some people will have limitations, but therapy is really, really important for everybody to be part of.
Yeah. So you can learn a lot from the therapist that your person has. So physical therapists try to help you regain as much function as possible in the limb that is injured. Or if you have a brain injury, they help you learn to walk again or talk again and be able to reach and get full function of your arms and legs. So that's what a physical therapist does. Occupational therapists help you with activities of daily living. So they help you learn to adapt to a wheelchair if you need it, or a walker or a cane. They teach you how to use it. It's not easy to learn how to use a cane. The way I thought when I got my first cane, I thought that I would, use it differently than but I was taught how to use it by going on spinlife.com. Spinlife.com sells wheelchairs, but they also have a lot of help articles on how to use a wheelchair, how to use a cane, how to use crutches properly so you minimize the risk of damaging your wrist, getting carpal tunnel. If you use elbow crutches for long term, you're going to get carpal tunnel. There is no way to avoid it, but there are ways you can use those elbow crutches to put off the damage some, to minimize it, so that you don't get that disability too. So there are lots of websites to help you learn how to adapt, because when a person gets disabled, that is a grief for them and for everybody around them, because part of your life is changed forever, or maybe temporarily. You know, if you break a leg, you're disabled temporarily, but you learn to function with crutches or a knee wheelchair until the bone heals, and then you may have arthritis in it and you may have pain in it, but you can function. So there are temporary disabilities, and then there are permanent disabilities. So, physical therapy can often make the difference between a temporary disability and a full-term one. So, if you listen to the professionals that are helping your loved one, and, even if it contradicts things you've learned in life or been told, or you knew somebody that was disabled and they didn't do this, but really, we are learning so much about disabilities every day. There's new research, there are new techniques. So science is a changing thing. What was valid 30 years ago is not going to be maybe the same in all ways today. So what is the biggest mistake that you see in families when their loved one gains a disability? Denial.
Yeah. Them not wanting to believe, and, a lot of times it's with pain. Family, nobody understands pain, not even doctors. They don't understand it. And everybody knows that pain exists, but they don't know how or where or why or whatever.
There's no specific test for how much pain a person is feeling. They have to go by subjective feelings. So they have the little smiley faces to frowny faces to try to make it more understandable of how bad is your pain, because two different people will experience pain differently. My mother was very sensitive to pain and pretty much felt it worse than my dad, who could put his hand under scorching water and not feel it. So his pain threshold was very high. He didn't feel pain in situations where you think a person would feel pain. I mean, he'd pour hot coffee right out of the pot and drink it, and me, it's like, ow, hot chocolate, I have to let it cool for a long time before I can drink it. So definitely people have different responses to pain and different ways of looking at pain. But to say that people should not have pain meds, this is an issue that, if you're on pain meds for a long time, you can get addicted even if you're feeling severe pain. If you take pain meds without having pain, of course you're going to get addicted. So people are afraid of addiction, and a lot of doctors don't understand addiction the way that they really need to. The likelihood of getting addicted to pain medicine when you're feeling a lot of pain is not as much as it would be for somebody who was just taking the meds to get high. So, you may not like to take medicine. I personally hate what pain meds do to me, and I've had a lot of different ones. So right now I'm using other techniques, but if I had an operation, yeah, I'll take pain medicine because I'm in a hospital and it's been given with the supervision of a doctor, and they have ways to wean you off of it if you do get addicted. So it's not going to do damage to you the way drug abuse would do damage to you. So don't be afraid of pain medicine. If your doctor is talking to you about pain medicine, don't just shut it off and say, no, I'm going to be strong, I'm not going to take pain medicine, because it's not a weakness to want pain medicine when you are hurting. So don't be afraid of getting addicted. Your doctor is there to prevent you from getting addicted and to make sure that you have pain relief so you don't go into shock and die. So, if you're in the hospital, don't refuse pain meds. Now, if you're having a baby, that's an individual decision of if you take pain meds, when you take pain meds, because it can affect your baby being awake and aware during those first 3 weeks. But that's a personal decision between a woman and her doctor as far as pain meds when you're in labor. But it's a different matter altogether. If you've got chronic pain, then, there are things that they can do, like morphine pumps or whatever. But your doctor's main job is to see you get through a period of pain without getting addicted. If you have chronic pain that is really severe, it can be dangerous not to treat it. So I hope you won't be afraid of pain medicine, but you will learn more about it. And especially, talk to your doctor. That's the person you should be discussing that. If you've got severe pain, you need to talk to your doctor and work out a plan between you of if or how much pain medicine, The danger of pain medicine is taking it in a way differently than it's prescribed. That's where most people get addicted. You borrow pain meds from a friend, or you take more because you're dying, you want something now. You need to talk to your doctor before you start grabbing extra pain meds. You can get addicted. So you want to follow the instructions that are on the prescription. You want to talk to the doctor if that's not enough for you. So a lot of people just assume that, pain medicine, that's a weakness. And if they have a relative that needs pain medicine, they might stand in the way of that and say, I don't want my loved one to get addicted. But would you mind telling them situations you've been in where people were dying and they were given pain medicine and the family said no?
There have been those situations because families, one, they're scared of it, which is understandable. Two, their loved ones are not they never wanted to take pain medicines.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't want to go against their wishes.
Uh-huh.
There's also situations to where they actually don't realize how much pain that they're really in.
Mm-hmm.
And they withhold medication. Not to be mean, but they just don't understand what the body's actually going through.
Yeah.
At that time. So it's not that they're, trying to be mean or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. It's just them not knowing the pain. It goes back to not being able to, do the pain thing. It's, pain is just there and nobody knows enough about it.
Yeah.
Until you personally go through it.
Yeah, and if you've personally not been through that kind of pain, you have no idea. I had bowel surgery, and I woke up from the anesthetic, and I was in so much pain I could not physically make a sound. It was horrible. And finally I was able to make a groan, and the nurse came over and she says, "Are you in pain?" I said, "Yes." So this was a situation that until you are hit with that kind of pain, you have no clue what it's like. And people who are dying have a lot of pain. So it's really, you may think, well, my loved one would never take pain medicine. But if they never had severe pain, they might change their mind if they were aware and they were, And if they're showing signs that they're having severe pain and the doctor thinks they ought to have pain medicine, then you really ought to listen to the doctor and let them have some pain medicine. And you said a lot of families are afraid that the person will sleep more and they'll miss time with them. But you also said that during the dying process, when they are transitioning, that they sleep a lot. So they may blame it on the pain medicine when actually the person, their organs are shutting down and they're just exhausted and they sleep a lot. So it's hard to separate how much of that is pain medicine and how much of that is just the mechanics of dying. So
it's very sad.
It is. It is. And it's hard on the CNA who is there. It's hard on the nurses and doctors who are there to witness somebody dying. But it's a process that has to happen.
Yeah, in the books that they give is awesome. I mean, it tells you, what goes on. And, and if you are a person taking care, like family members, let the people come in and do their job. Don't try to keep it all on you, because you're going to have a lot of shoulda, woulda, couldas, and didn'ts when you just need to be with the person and love the person. And let them know that you're there for them. And just let people come in and do what they got to do, and you be there to love them.
Yeah, exactly. Don't feel like you're not doing anything, just sitting there talking to the person or holding their hand, because that's so important. When my mother died, my mother was in the ICU. I could only go in for 10 minutes at a time. All of us were there. And the ICU at that hospital was, there were curtains between people. There were like 6 people in there dying. And my mother had really bad pneumonia, and she had emphysema. So she was brain dead. We had to actually make the decision to pull the plug. And I wanted to say something to her so bad. I was even afraid to touch her, and I'd never been around anybody dying before. I was 22. So I just didn't, and I was 5 months pregnant at the time also. And Dad gave me her hand, and he had been just talking quietly to her, and But I was aware of the beeping machines and the nurses all around, and I felt like I couldn't talk to her. And that's my one regret. I wish I had just spoken up and talked to Mama, and I did tell her I loved her, but I didn't talk much. And that's one thing I would change about my mother's death. I would talk to her more. My sister refused to even hold her hand. She was just so devastated by it. And you got to understand, Mama was in a coma. A person in a coma is not like a person asleep. Their eyes are partly open, they're jittering from side to side. It's a horrifying thing to see. And her face was all swollen, and her body was swollen, because that's one thing that happens too during a coma. It was horrifying to see her in that condition. When this was Sunday, the Friday before that, I had talked to her on the phone. But she wasn't able to talk to us. She was in a coma. So I knew that people often hear everything that's going on during a coma. A coma is not just being unconscious. There are layers of it, and at times they almost wake up and they can hear what you're saying. So I knew that Mama might be hearing some of what we were saying. And there was so much I wanted to say, but what do you say when somebody's dying and you're about to cut off the life support? It is very, very hard. And, I've been thinking about that day a lot, because Memorial Day is one of the holidays that bring these memories close to me. And, so one of the things I want to do on this channel is discuss things like this. And when you've got somebody with a handicap, it's good to know something about that handicap. And if doctors give you stuff to read, please take the time to read it. Because education fights fear. If you are afraid, denial comes from fear, right? You're going to deny that this is happening because it's so horrible. You're just afraid that everything has changed and nothing's going to be the same anymore. And it's really hard to go through a kind of loss of a function, or loss of a person, or maybe your relationship changes. Maybe the disability affects their thinking or their communicating with you. So it's very hard to take, and that denial is that protective mechanism that your body is trying to help you deal with the shock. But bottom line, if you're afraid of something, if you know more about it, then you're not going to fear it as much. And that fear can be paralyzing. That's where denial comes from. It's paralyzing fear of the unknown. When you get into the world of disability, it is a new territory. It is frightening. It is scary. It is a big change. And we normally don't like change. We like things to stay the same. We don't like to have to adapt to new situations. This is just part of human nature. So, when you consider a disability, and it may be that you have a baby, and 99 2/3% of babies born in this country are normal, healthy, happy, and the story has a happy ending. But every day there are kids that have bicycle accidents, there are sports accidents, there are things that can happen at birth that affect a child. So you might have to face this, and you're not expecting to have to face it, because most people they go in the hospital and come home with a healthy baby. So it can be very, very hard for parents to accept that their child has a disability. So especially if it's something that, like childhood cancer or something serious like that, or even childhood arthritis, it was probably very hard for my mother that I wasn't able to run and play like normal children. I got tired easily, which is not normal for any kid. It was probably a great thing of grief for her that I wasn't entirely normal. I didn't talk until I was 2 years old. So she thought I was retarded. And so then one day at the grocery store, I spelled out the name of this candy. And she's staring at me, and the cashier says, "I didn't know she could spell." And Mama says, "I didn't know she could talk." I was 2.5. So, they found out that I was normal in a lot of ways, but I wasn't normal physically. And that's a grief for a parent. It's very hard to accept that your supposedly normal, healthy baby isn't normal and healthy. But it's important to learn more about the condition. I can't emphasize that enough. You really, when there is a disability in your family, it is important. If you are a disabled person, don't waste time denying it. Learn about it. It's not good to dwell on it. I will certainly tell you that it's not a good idea to continually be on the internet researching your disability. You've got to keep your sanity too. So I have fibromyalgia. Every great once in a while I will take a look to see if there's been any research done on it. Fibromyalgia is a disease. It's not really a disease or a condition because it does no damage, but you feel pain signals that aren't there. You feel false pain that is not caused by any kind of disease process or illness process in the body. It's just constant severe pain, and it can be worsened by the time change, weather changes, barometric pressure, heat, cold. I mean, a lot of things can affect your fibromyalgia and make it worse. If I sat and got on the internet every day looking for cures or, stuff like that, I would drive myself crazy. And I've known people with it that were in our group. I was in a support group for a while run by the Arthritis Foundation. I wish they still had that. But a lot of people were chasing after all these cures, and we would keep track of who was trying what treatment and how well they did, and we came to the conclusion that none of this stuff was really helping anybody. There were a few people that would try something and say that it helped, but it might also be the placebo effect. You can be given a sugar pill and be told it's a miracle drug that's going to help you feel better, and you might actually feel better not because the sugar pill did anything, but because of your belief that the sugar pill would do something. That's called the placebo effect. Usually they have studies that they'll give people medicine, and they will give a fake medicine to part of the group so that they can tell if the medicine actually does any good. And some people will just sporadically improve because of their belief that the medicine will make them better somehow. But it doesn't usually last. So researchers can tell from this that oh, it was helping, but it doesn't seem to help as much now. Well, maybe that was the placebo effect. But, and that's what's known as a blind study or double-blind study, where you've got half the people, and they tell them at the beginning of the study, you know, you may get the medicine or you may get the fake medicine. So, you know, you can't just get in a study and try a medicine to see if it will help you, because you may or may not get the real stuff. But I did participate in the study, and I was very happy to do so, and I did get the real medicine. But you know, you can't bank on that and say, oh, I'm going to try this and see if it helps me. Well, you know, you may get it or you may not. But the point I'm trying to make is that with something like fibromyalgia that there's no real treatment for, I mean, they can give you Lyrica. It does have side effects like any pain medicine, and I decided the side effects were too much and I quit. But, you know, there's new treatments coming out all the time, and there's also these snake oil dealers that will tell you, oh, try this, it'll make your pain go away, you'll get more function and all this stuff. And you try so many of those, you know, your friend will say, oh, here, take this herb, it'll help you. One person gave me an herb and it made me deathly ill. Sometimes medicine may work fine for one person, and your body chemistry may say, this is not good for me, and you get sick. So you really want to have a doctor's advice and not just try herb after herb after herb, trying to find something that works for you. Plus, the psychological effect of that is just devastating. When you hear so much good stuff about this and you think, oh, this is going to help me, and then you try it, and that letdown is so depressing. So, you know, I say to you, you know, stick to the scientific literature, please. Don't say, well, this helped this friend of mine, so I'm going to try it. But, you know, if you do that, don't be doing it all the time, because it's just too stressful when it doesn't work. And maybe some things do work, you know. There's always the tried and true home remedies of heating pads and propping yourself, you know, when you're propped up in bed, you want to have your pillow straight. So you want to watch that you're not sagging off to one side or whatever. So positioning can help a lot. There's stuff like that. Can you think of anything else? Getting up and moving around, for example. You don't want to just stay in bed when you feel bad because you lose function. So even though it hurts and even though it's uncomfortable, you need to get up and walk around and move around every once in a while. Even if you're just in bed, you know, do some arm circles, or, you know, especially if you're holding this, do some hand, wrist, and finger exercises so that you don't get arthritis from holding your game controller too long. Because really, if you're doing that hours and hours a day and not giving your body a rest every once in a while, you can get arthritis in your fingers, and you can get carpal tunnel. So you want to make sure that you take breaks and, you know, rotate those shoulders and lift those legs and move them around so you don't get blood clots. So that's one thing I can think of that is really important when you're sitting and gaming. You don't want to be at the computer for like 4 hours at a time without getting up and moving around. You should get up every hour and move around so you don't get disabilities, because you can sure get them. Carpal tunnel is a bad disability. So, you want to be careful with your body. You only get one body. So you want to, and if you say, well, I'm already disabled, I'm already messed up. Well, you can be more messed up. You can always be more messed up. So take extra care. If you've got a disability, take extra care of yourself. It's easy to get depressed and like, what's the purpose? But really, you can always be more disabled. You can always lose some of the functions you've got. So you have to be vigilant when you're disabled to take care of yourself. Do something fun. There's always something fun. No matter how disabled you are, there is always something to laugh about, to enjoy looking at, to, like this game. I really enjoy driving, and I gave it up recently. And because I wasn't driving my van, and it was just sitting and getting more broken. So I decided it was time to sell the van and give it up. And it's okay, Chrissy can take me to the doctor, and my daughter can take me to the doctor, and that's mainly why I leave the house, to get allergy shots. So, I can let them drive me. I don't have to drive. And really, it's probably better for other people that I don't drive, because I got to where I was missing stop signs and missing turns and getting the knee-jerk reactions. When you start doing unsafe things, it's better to get off the road. So I got off the road. So now I play Horizon 4 and drive all over the place in England. And I was driving in Horizon 3 in Australia, so, I still love the scenery. So, and I'm having a lot of fun busting down fences, which I would never do in real life. But games aren't real life. You know that the software will reset everything after about 5 minutes. You come by the same fence that you've torn down 50 times, and in 5 minutes it's all restored. That's an unbreakable fence. But you know when you're playing a video game, it's not real life. It's your fantasy world, and I'm getting skill points by breaking things. In real life, I wouldn't be getting any skill points. I would be getting points off my driver's license. So, I wouldn't want to be doing this in real life. Besides the property damage, the threat of harm to people, including myself, no, I wouldn't be doing this in real life. But it's fun to do it on the screen and to be able to just drive around and enjoy the scenery and the beauty of this spring season. In Horizon 4, there's a different season every week. So we just had snow. Whoops, sorry, NPC truck. But we just had snow and ice, and we're sliding around more, and some of my cars have snow tires. So now it's spring and it's beautiful, and sometimes it's rainy, and it's just nice. I like this. Right now it's a beautiful sunny day, which I don't think they have that many beautiful sunny days in England. they mostly have rain, and that's why it's so green and beautiful. It's like us here in Georgia, we get 45 inches of rain a year. That's a lot of rain. In Utah, where I lived for a while, they get about 4.5 inches of rain a year. Yeah, so the main water that comes is snow in the wintertime. And every inch of snow is a tenth of an inch of water. So you don't get a lot of water from snow, but the snowpack in the mountains is where the water supply comes from in the spring. So if you don't have a lot of snow in the mountains, you don't have a lot of water for irrigation and for drinking and bathing and all that stuff. So there's a lot of water restrictions out west, but they have had to have them in Georgia too, because sometimes we have droughts. And so they'll have, you can only water on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can't water every day, and things like that. Of course, people with gardens get precedence. If you've got a garden that you've got to water and you're depending on that food, then yeah, you can water your garden, but if you're watering grass, there are restrictions. So you would think that Georgia, with 45 inches of rain a year, that's quite a lot. We have a lot of thunderstorms that can drop an inch, in a few hours. So sometimes we have bad storms that can drop several inches in just a few hours, and then we have flood warnings. And especially in our county, we have a lot of flood warnings because there's a lot of water here. The water table is pretty high, so it's pretty easy to have enough rain from a tropical storm that you get flooding. Flash flooding, so we have to be careful. I don't particularly live in a flood zone, thank goodness, but for people that do, it's hard, very hard. So, that's why I'm glad we have the Red Cross, because they'll come in after somebody's had a house fire or a flooding situation, and they help them to get a motel room and stuff like that. But keep in mind that the Red Cross takes 3 days to come in an area and set up. So you need to be prepared if a natural disaster happens, that you have 3 days of food and water, because it takes the Red Cross 3 days to be able to come in and help you. And you might get pretty hungry in those 3 days and pretty thirsty. You can only do 3 days without water. If you've got water, you can go maybe 54 days without food. So water is the main thing you want to stockpile. You want to have a gallon per day for every family member. And you can catch water from the sink, and you can put it in juice bottles, or I don't recommend milk jugs because they are made to biodegrade for the most part. You don't want to have gallon jugs of water under your sink that suddenly start leaking for no reason. But juice containers are usually pretty good for that, and gallon containers for things like aloe juice or apple juice, those are usually a little more sturdy. So, you can add 16 drops of bleach to a gallon of water and sterilize it. So if you have that, you have your containers, you need to put a date on them, and every 6 months either dump them out and refresh the water, or put 16 drops of bleach in there. Because if you keep them long enough, you can have mold growing in them. You don't want to drink moldy water. That would not be good. Yes, they get antibiotics for mold, but they don't use mold straight. They process it. So you don't want to ingest mold in any shape, form, or fashion. Well, thank you for being with us, Chrissy, and have a good night. I feel very fortunate that I've been able to have Chrissy on this live stream and be able to have her talk about from her experience, because she has a lot of experience that a lot of CNAs haven't had. So she really knows a lot, and I'm constantly asking her for her expertise, concerned with her job and not. Sometimes I ask her things for my book research. So definitely, because I write science fiction, so definitely she is a great resource for me and a good friend. So definitely I hope to have her back again. You too. Take care. Bye-bye. So now that we've been interviewing for an hour, I will do something a bit more interesting. Let's see what's on the map. I have this speed zone, rolling fields, which I need to hit 170. So I don't need to compare. I wanted to set route, and I'm going to fast travel there. And I'm going to get me another car. How about that? Alrighty. Oh, I said I was going to get another car. Let's see if the Peugeot can do it. Can the Peugeot do it? Hard to say. Alright, here we go. Speed up, little Peugeot. Speed up, little Peugeot. Alright, here we go.
You have arrived at your destination.
142. That's not very good. Not good enough. Alright, I'm going to get another car. I'm going to get the Mercedes. So I'm going to go by manufacturer down to Mercedes. Mercedes-Benz. And I wonder if I could do better with this because it's all terrain. Shall we find out? Project EAT, which is from doing the Top Gear storyline. So if you do some chapters in Top Gear, you will get this car, and it is marvelous. It's a marvelous Mercedes. So the other one is the Magic Mercedes. This is the marvelous Mercedes. So I'm going to try. I ran out of bounds. Well, let's try it from the other direction. I've arrived, yes, but I have not beaten my score. So, alright. Let's try it again. But I need to mark where this ends. And that wasn't what I wanted to do. Actually, I have done a lot of these. So my Forzathon weekly stuff is 49% complete. At 50, I get a Porsche. So if I could get rolling fields, then maybe, just maybe, I could get the Porsche. So, I'm gonna work extra hard on this. Okay. Alright, I'll go down here. Have I got all the perks on this car? Let me find out. 13 of 16. Oh. Well, it's not really going to help me, but why not a wheel spin? I want the 6-wheeler Mercedes. Let's see if I get it. All right, give me the 6-wheeler Mercedes. I got 5,000 credits. 6-wheeler Mercedes. Ooh, 140,000. Well, if I save up enough, I can lay down $5,000 and get it. Or 10 grand actually. Oh, the Edinburgh watch. Okay, good. Well, I might do a cross country in this car. You never know. Okay, so, all right, I have put some points on there. Da 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 da. Oh, and I'm already running off the road, and I haven't even gotten in the speed zone yet. All right, let's try this. Okay. Woo. Let's go. Woo. All right. Oh, don't go out. Ah! Went out of the zone. Ah! It's like, no, don't go out of the zone. Let's go back until we are behind the speed zone, if it will go that far. It did. All right. Zoom, zoom. Right. Gotta get faster, faster. We gotta get faster. Oh.
You have arrived at your destination.
Ah, that one didn't do it. I need 38 kilometers more. 38 kilometers more. All right. Come on, EAT, you can do this. All right. Let's do this. Whoa, don't go off the road. No. Good for skill points, very bad for staying in the speed zone to go through the gates. Now we're through the gates, we gotta do this. Oh, we failed. But we will try again. All right, here we go. We failed again. Honestly. It's a thing of we have to avoid the tractor that is obviously in the way, so we can't cut that corner. All right. Oh, no. We can't hit the bridge abutment. I'm a bridge abutment magnet. I am a magnet for bridge abutments, trees, all manner of immovable objects. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I failed. Yeah, it's terrible. Oh, all right. Why don't I have the fancy antennas and stuff on this car? I need to look at modifications I could make. Alright, we're going to back up. Back up! Da 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 da. Alright, we're gonna go back through. Yeah. We're gonna start again. Start on over again. Okay. Alright. Whoop. Woo, yeah. Alright. Woo. Alright. Get that speed up. Oh, I'm not gonna make it. Oh. It's not enough.
You have arrived at your destination.
Alright. How do I get that speed up? Just push on the gas and use the brake when you have to. Oh. And I failed. Failure again. It's the last day of the season. I really need to do something here. Whoa.
You have arrived at your destination.
43. That's about the best I can do. Speed zones are not my forte. Alright. What about a speed trap? If I can't do a speed zone, maybe I can do a speed trap. That's a speed trap. I need 322 kilometers per hour. 322 through there. So I'm going to start down here. All right, I need 322 to win. And the tractor pulls out in front of me. So that's how it's going to be, huh? Whoop. Whoa, tractors. Okay. NPCs. Right, let's get it.
You have arrived at your destination.
I did not make it. 62 kilometers an hour or more to get 3 stars. Ooh, this is wicked. It's a rural area, you've got tractors. By the way, did you know that it's more dangerous to drive on a rural road than it is in the city? It's a common misconception that the country is safe, so you can just go faster and there's not as many police to catch you, but oh my, a lot of people find out the hard way that there's a lot of stuff in rural areas you just don't want to be speeding through. Tractors, people who aren't expecting you to go fast, who pull out from places or maybe turn without giving a turn signal and you rear end them. I mean, there are 100 hazards on a rural road. So you might think about that the next time you're going on a long trip and you pass through these little towns and you think, oh, I can just speed through here, they'll never catch me. If they do, you're in for big fines because that's how a lot of small towns, particularly in Georgia, make their revenue. You come through speeding and you get slapped with a huge fine, and you've got the inconvenience of having to appear in court some places far from home. So, I tell you, just don't do it. Don't do it. There's unexpected things on rural roads, like tractors, farm equipment, and other hazards that you may not see, obviously, until it's too late. There are a lot of places in the country that have sinkholes, and something that doesn't look like a bridge can collapse. So infrastructure problems are a big problem in this country. So you might consider that there are dangers on rural roads that you don't know because you're not local. And the reason speed limits are put the way they are is to try to protect you. So the yellow signs, they are basically to make you not shift sideways in your seatbelt. Right, but if you're going on a rural road and you know how fast you can take a curve, you can still be within the speed limit and take that curve at the speed you know you can take it. If you're not native to an area and you don't drive that road, a curve that looks like no big deal, once you get into it, it's like, whoa, this is more of a curve than I thought. And that's how a lot of accidents happen, losing control on curves, particularly in the mountains of northeast Georgia. So when I learned to drive in the mountains of northeast Georgia, the county in which I learned to drive was the accident capital of not only the country, but the world, because it had a lot of curvy mountain roads, and a lot of them that didn't look like they were a big curve until you got into them, and then it's too late to slow down, because physics happens, right? So you want to consider that a lot of people I went to school with, graduated in 1977, are not here anymore because they thought they could take a curve faster than they could and lost their lives in horrible accidents because of it. So I want to tell you, rural roads can kill you. And having grown up in that area and seen the horrible consequences in the reducing numbers of people who made it to high school reunions, that's a lot of grieving families. That's a lot of young lives taken that shouldn't have been, But they were trying to drive too fast on these rural roads and found out the hard way, yep. So
You have arrived at your destination.
think about that rural roads can be very, very dangerous. So try to resist the urge to speed when you're going on a cross-country trip. Yeah, it's hard
You have arrived at your destination.
to go places that you have these long, tedious drives. But personally, when doing long drives, I have really enjoyed going off the interstate and taking back roads. Yes, it takes a lot longer, but you get to see all this nice scenery, and farmland is beautiful. So, you know, if you have to make a long trip, you might as well make the best of it and go through some scenery that is different and broken up and not as likely to lull you into a stupor as interstate driving. Interstates are a quicker way to get there, but sometimes I'd rather just take a little longer and go the back roads and enjoy the scenery, stop at some family restaurants that's not the same old stuff you get at the fast foods. You know, it can be very, very pleasant. And, you know, there are some wonderful eating places in different areas. Where's my thing? Where is my thing? I lost it. It's right there. Okay, I have to hit 322 on that. Whew.
Turn around when it is safe to do so.
Okay. 322, my goodness. This is a tall order. Oh. Go back some.
Turn around when it is safe to do so.
All right. Turning around now. So if you want to drive fast, get on Forza Horizon 4 and get it out of your system. Don't drive like this on the highways, folks. Really. You're risking your life and the lives of anybody who's in the car with you, who's stupid enough to ride with you. So, yeah. It's good experience to drive in a game like this and see that wasn't anywhere near 320 miles an hour. But you can see sort of the mechanics of how accidents happen in this game, and I think everybody should, you know, in driver's ed, they should be playing this game and learning the things that I've learned in this game. My mother, as well as being a newspaper writer for a number of years, was an emergency room nurse, and she saw the consequences firsthand of accidents. Not something for those with weak stomachs, for sure. And she used to always be talking about highway safety to me. And she would go over what-if scenarios. And the insurance company that my dad used gave a free subscription to Kiplinger magazine, and it had a lot of articles about race drivers, racing, and there was a particular article I remember well, written by a famous race car driver. I can't remember who it was now. I was a little kid, but Mama let me read the article, and she said, this is what you do if you're in a car and you lose control. So say you get in a skid on a rainy day. Here is how you correct for it. And I read the article and memorized it. I loved stuff like that when I was 7. I was an unusual kid. I would pretend I was driving a car, and I would pretend I would get into a skid and practice turning the wheels in the direction of the skid. I never had to use this particular skill on the highway. I never got into a skid, but I was prepared. And if I had, I would have known what to do because I practiced it. Every minute in the car, I was always looking for, okay, if somebody turned suddenly in front of me, or if somebody was coming at me, what would I do? Where would I go? And both my parents taught me that, and later I verified it, that, it is much better to hit a stationary object than an object that is moving towards you at a high speed. So if somebody's driving in the wrong lane, maybe they're passing somebody in an unsafe area and they come to you, what do? I was in the car with my dad one time in rush hour traffic on 285. And this guy was going way too fast, weaving in and out in traffic, threading the needle. It was bad. Dad looked in the rearview mirror and saw him coming, and there was a gap between two cars, and he took it. And that car was suddenly in the space we had just been in. Now, if my dad had not seen that gap and gotten over, we would have been crushed. We were in a Volkswagen Rabbit, for Pete's sakes. A 1976 Volkswagen Rabbit. It would have crushed like a sardine can. So it really shook both of us up. But my dad did the right thing. He saw a gap, he took it, and he saved both of our lives by doing that. So if you're vigilant, you can prevent an accident. If you're not vigilant, you can be in one. So always, when you're driving a car, know where your escape route is. If something's coming at you, you don't want to be hit head on. You want to hit something that's stationary. It's half the impact. You might survive it. So what are you going to do? You're going to go in the field, tear down some mailboxes, you're going to hit a fence, you're going to hit a tree. Anything's better than hitting a car that is moving towards you at a high rate of speed. Head-on collisions are deadly. And I might add, there was a silly jingle from the 60s that I used to sing every time I got in the car. My parents were probably sick of it. Buckle up for safety, buckle up. You'll be safe and sound if you buckle up. And it's really true. A lot of people are afraid to wear a seatbelt because in a wreck they're afraid of being trapped in the car. Well, you are probably, if you're going to get trapped in the car, you would probably be trapped in the car whether you were wearing your seatbelt or not. But the fact is, if you are in a car and your seatbelt is fastened, you're a lot less likely to die, because the number one killer in a car wreck is head injuries and internal injuries. And if you're thrown about on the inside of the car, you are much more likely to sustain a fatal head injury or a crushing injury that, you can't recover from.
At your destination.
So the risk of being trapped in the car is there whether you wear the seatbelt or not. But if you're thrown out of the car in a wreck at a high rate of speed, you are very likely to die of the head injuries and the crushing injuries of suddenly hitting an immovable object with your body. If you're in the seat, it cushions the impact a lot, and your car is built, and let's do it again, how about that? Your car is built as a shell to help you stay alive in the case of an accident. They've done lots of tests with crash dummies. They've got accelerometers on those dummies. They can tell exactly how much force was put on the crash dummy's body, and what they can surmise what would happen with a real person. So, you know, you want to wear the seatbelt. Your chances of not being able to get the seatbelt off after the accident are very slim. And an accident that crushes the seatbelt buckle probably crushes you too. So you're probably not going to be trapped in a car. At least not by your seatbelt. You might be trapped in the car by the metal of the car curling around you. But that metal is designed to curl in such a way that it actually protects you from worse injury. So, you know, take that as you will, but a lot of disabilities happen from head injuries. So I'm saying, you know, if you're driving your motorcycle, wear your helmet. You know, protect your head. Make your kids wear a helmet when they're on their bicycles, skateboards, and other things. Scooters, whatever. Because protecting the head is the most important thing in any accident. Household accidents, too. You know, lots of people die every year from head injuries sustained from a simple fall in the home. I'm not going to start wearing a football helmet around the house, but if my balance was so bad that was a worry, I would wear one. But I hold on to stuff. Now, my grip is fallible, but, you know, when I'm moving around the house, I don't walk without holding on to something or somebody, because I know my balance isn't good. So, you know, there are some accidents that can be prevented. Tripping hazards around the home, throw rugs that are slippery, that's a very bad thing. Get some adhesive strips for those things so they don't move. You know, it's so easy to prevent tragedy than it is to deal with tragedy once it comes. You know, it's a hard thing. It's a very hard thing to have your life change that fast. And car accidents are probably a major source of injuries that disable people. So, safety in the car equals maybe more years of not being disabled. That is priceless. You can't put a monetary value on that. And no matter how careful and safe a driver you are, if you count 4 people on the roads, one of them is driving drunk or high. That's a lot. That's a lot. And if you consider that somebody who is under the influence of drugs and alcohol may feel that they're not going as fast as they are, or they, you know, because their reality is impaired, whether they would think that their reality is impaired or not, it's not a good idea to be on the road with people who are not experiencing reality as you are. So, always be planning your escape route. You know, rather than hit somebody head on, Because in this game, you can hit people head on, and it really doesn't do much. There's no hospitals, there's no ambulances, waiting rooms where you're wondering if your loved one is going to live. I mean, none of that in this game, because it's totally a fantasy game. So even though the driving is pretty realistic in a lot of ways, you're not going to see helmets where they would be applied. You know, most race car drivers wear a helmet. You're not going to see that. You're not going to see airbags deployed in this game. It says so at the very beginning when you turn the game on. So, oops. No, thank you. Xbox thought I wanted it to do something, but AI's gotta love them. But you know, there's a big tie between disability and operating a vehicle of some sort. Bicycles, cars, motorcycles, trucks, semis, you know, all of these cause, accidents cause a lot of disabilities every year. Someday they'll have perfected self-driving cars and you can put it on autopilot when you're going to be doing something else behind the wheel. And eventually it will be affordable for everybody who can afford a car. Right now, it's only available to wealthy people. But it'll be nice someday to have self-driving cars and be able to predict slowdowns, you know, put cars in alternate routes and stuff like that. There are good things coming. But right now, we have too many accidents on our highways. A lot of them are caused by inexperienced drivers, particularly young drivers, but it's not necessarily the case that, you know, all these young drivers are causing all the accidents. No, a good many are caused by elderly people and seniors like me who are doing unsafe things because their faculties have deteriorated past a certain point. And it's very hard when you've got a relative that you know is unsafe behind the wheel and you want to take them off the road and, you know, they're not willing. My grandfather had cataracts so bad he could hardly see. And even after the cataract surgery, you know, state of the art was not good back then. He had cataract surgery and he still couldn't see very well. He had fisheye glasses. And he really got to the point where he could not see well enough to drive. And he was constantly running off the road, having large repair bills on his pickup truck. I mean, he really shouldn't have been on the road. One time they found him in the next county, the police did, because he was confused. He didn't know where he was or how to get home. That's a sign of something going on that really they shouldn't be driving. So Mama took him to live with us for the last 6 months of his life. I really was glad to have my grandfather in the house. And my grandmother had died, so bless his heart, he needed to be around the loving family during his time of grief. And that's got to be the hardest grief of all, when you've been married to somebody for so many years and you lose them. it's just devastating. So men don't usually live long after their wives die. Women live longer after their husbands die than husbands do after their wives die. Men have to be strong for so many things. I guess that's just kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back. So, grief is a hard thing, and it can have physical effects on bodies. It can cause organs to fail before they would fail. So, there's some clinical proof that grief is very bad for aging people. But the main point that I'm talking about here is disabilities happen. And if you live long enough, you will gain a disability because things just don't work as well as you age. And it finally gets to a point where something breaks and, there you are. So don't think that disabilities can't ever happen to you, because they can. It might be a traffic accident, it might be an accident in your home. It's hard to say. There are a lot of things. A disease can give you a high fever and make you disabled. A lot of times suicide attempts don't work and sometimes end up with the person being disabled instead of dead. Not as they planned, right? So, we want to recognize that there are all kinds of disabilities. Not all of them are physical. There are a lot of mental disabilities. People can acquire a mental illness that is disabling. So, people need to see mental illness as a disability, because it really is. It may not be a physical problem, but if your brain doesn't function correctly, then, there's a whole host of things that can go wrong in a brain. Sometimes from a head injury, but most times mental illness is not caused by injury, but by just trauma or maybe abuse, maybe just plain genetics. Mental illness is just as devastating as physical illness. So the next time you see somebody and you're saying, well, that person shouldn't be on disability, they're able to work. Well, their body may be able to work, their mind may not be able to work. So before you start saying, oh, they're faking it, realize that some disabilities are intermittent. Fibromyalgia is not the same every day. If there's good weather for a long time, my fibromyalgia improves greatly to the point that I might not have much pain with it. But then bad weather comes and stays for a while, and I just degrade. So the weather has a lot to do with how functional I am. And with people who are mentally ill, maybe their mental illness bothers them more at some times than others. There's this misconception that if you're disabled, you're disabled. But there are a lot of people in that gray area that they're disabled some days and not disabled others. I missed it. So, understanding disability means also understanding mental illness as a disability. Because mental illness can be just as disabling as physical illness. And it's not as well understood because people who are mentally ill tend not to admit it. Because they don't want people saying, oh, you're crazy or you're lazy. You can just get up and do things. You don't have to lay there in bed. Well, if somebody's extremely depressed, that's all they can do. They kind of shut down because they feel so worthless and so helpless. You know? Mental illness needs to be understood more, and I'm hoping because of COVID that mental illness will be more of an understood thing. Because a lot more people are getting depressed because of having to isolate and not being able to see relatives and friends. We are social. People are social animals, and it's really hard to live with restrictions on seeing people. We see that in school children. They need other kids. But I think that instead of forcing everybody to go back to school, I think that there should be provision for social outlets, both in school and out of school. There need to be safe places that kids can gather and just talk online and in school. I've said this before on my live stream, and I'll say it again. I believe that kids should have the same rights that anybody that has an hourly wage has. Now, I would go a step further and say that managers should get the same 30-minute lunch and 15 minutes break for every hour worked as hourly employees if they supervise. I think it's ridiculous to expect a manager to work 16 hours straight with no break. First of all, their kidneys are not going to last, and it's bad from just about every standpoint. And another thing, retail establishments should have to consider that an employee is getting enough sleep before they schedule them for back-to-back shifts. How can you expect someone to function at your company if they haven't had adequate sleep? In some cases, it might cost somebody their life. Either the person, because they're sleepy and they're not fully aware, or the people who work for them that might get sent into a situation because of poor judgment. A person who hasn't had enough sleep, they said at, I believe, the National Safety Council, I think, had a report that if you have been 24 hours without sleep, if you drive, it's like driving drunk. It is just as bad as if you had been on a drinking binge. So you need not to force employees into a not enough sleep situation. Sleep should be a guaranteed human right. And it should be illegal to schedule somebody so that they do not have 8 hours of sleep before they have to come back into work. If somebody works the night shift and then you're expecting them to come into work the next day early in the morning, they're not going to get adequate sleep, and they're not going to do as good a job for you. And they might have some resentment if this happens often. So really, from a bunch of standpoints, it should be illegal to schedule people so they don't get enough sleep. The point is not that this may be once in a blue moon. The point is they've done enough studies to find out that chronic lack of sleep reduces years of life. So it's actually harmful to even go one night without sleep. So, you don't know how many nights that person has had to go without adequate sleep. So you need to not make it worse by scheduling them so that they don't get enough sleep. But I think a lot of it comes that managers are required to work 16-hour days sometimes without getting a bathroom break or drink something to keep hydrated. And it's ridiculous. No employee should have to go without a lunch break or without breaks just to sit and unwind. It's ridiculous. I was married to a pharmacist, and I saw how he was expected to work 16 hours straight with nothing to drink and with no bathroom break when it was busy. It happened often, and I was going, this is crazy. Doesn't OSHA cover that? And he said, no, I can't as a manager. That doesn't apply to us. Well, it should apply to everybody. It should apply to doctors, lawyers, everybody. So we need reforms in the workplace. We definitely do. But I would go a step further and say that the basic OSHA guidelines, 30 minutes for lunch and 15 minutes for every 4 hours worked, could apply to school children as well. But I think it should be double for anybody under 18. They're not adults yet. Why should they have to function as adults and be expected to do their assignments on time and all these things, but yet they can't socialize with their friends? Now, I see that there's problems with fights. If you allow recess, you are going to have fights. You're going to have people trying to beat up people. Why can't you just have more supervision? Kids need social outlets. And teachers need a break too. So why can't they switch off and have some times that kids can either gather in the lunchroom or the auditorium or out on the playground? And I think there should be playgrounds for high schools as well. You can make it kind of like a public park. There needs to be places on campus like they do at college campuses. And just have nice places to commune with nature and just calm down. Because school is so stressful. I think that it should be the law that everybody should get a 30-minute at least lunch break, and anybody under 18 needs an hour. And you might say, well, schedules just won't work that way. Well, you need to make them work that way. We know so much more about children psychologically and physically than we did at the turn of the century. And basically, school has not changed that much from the turn of the century. Horse and buggy days, where people were expected to work 14 hours straight in factories, and a lot of them were children. We have made some progress, but not nearly enough. If you treat children like animals, they will behave so. If you treat children like they don't deserve to have social time, and what do teachers do? They have to keep control of the classroom, and classes are huge, so they have to keep children from socializing while in class, while being taught. But it's insane to think that, kids can go to school, they can see each other in the classroom, but they can't have time to socialize. And you're saying, they get to socialize while they're going to their lockers or whatever. Well, that's not socialization. Really, So they need to have a chance to sit down and talk to people. And you wonder why people are always on their phones texting and they're not talking in person. Well, maybe they're not taught to talk in person in schools, just saying. They are expected to be little robots and work all the time. They don't get as many holidays as they used to get. There used to be breaks in the school year. When I was in school, there were holidays every month, and we looked forward to having a party every month, and thank Heavenly Father, my teachers did not base that on attendance. Some teachers did. I never would have gotten a party from attendance because I was always sick. I have B positive blood. They'd found during this time of COVID that people with A and B blood get sick more. They are more likely to contract the coronavirus and more likely to have consequences from it because they generally don't have as good of an immune system as people with AB or O blood. So, I always had high absenteeism at school and at work. I did a good job, I did good work, but people look like you're a drug addict or something. And why should they have the stigma about drug addiction? 1 in 4 people in our country are addicted to a drug or alcohol. Why do we not provide these people with treatment? Why don't we use that as an alternative to jail? I don't understand why we've got people put away in jails for 20 years because of a drug charge. And they should be giving these people drug treatment and not having the high cost of incarceration. We pay more for our jails than just about anything in society. It's crazy. And a lot of people sitting in jail aren't criminals. They are drug addicts, and maybe they've broken the law to get drugs, yes. That, there should be consequences for doing crimes. But there should also be some penalties that involve drug treatment, becoming a productive member of society. Jail really doesn't rehabilitate. It teaches criminals how to be better criminals because they're, making plans for when they get out and they're going to rob another bank or they're going to, whatever. I'm not talking about seasoned criminals, but I believe that seasoned criminals are in the minority. Most of what's sitting in jail is people accused wrongly of things, people who have had small amounts of drugs on them, and they're put away for all these years because of the laws that were enacted in the 1980s to fight crime. The war on drugs was a total failure. If you look at analyses of that period, the high incarceration rate has not reduced the drug problem, it's exploded. You know, it wasn't 1 in 4 people in 1980. Now the statistics are 1 in 4 people in this country are addicted. What we're doing is not working. We need different techniques to solve these societal ills, and putting people in jail for longer and longer jail terms is not the answer. Now, yes, you have to protect society from rapists, robbers, and murderers. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if somebody has drug charges that keep them in jail a long time, couldn't we look for alternatives to incarceration? You know, and once somebody has a record, it is extremely hard for them to hold a job because the stigma is there of them having been in jail, so nobody will hire them much. It's awful. And why should we put that on a young person? You know, if a teenager commits a crime, teenagers are emotional, volatile. You know, it's not the same thing as if they're an adult. Now, I'm not talking about cases where teenagers kill people and, you know, stuff like that. That is a different matter. But I'm talking about mainly drug charges, you know. And if a state passes laws that don't make it a crime to have X amount of drugs, why don't they release all the people that have been sitting in jail because of that law? Why do they continue to keep people in jail when they could be released? You know, and for drug charges, if they haven't committed any crimes such as murder or armed robbery or things like that, if they just possess a small amount of drugs, why put them in jail in the first place? Find them and get them drug treatment, you know? The problem of gangs in this country is a serious problem that is a complicated issue, and it is going to take smarter people than me to figure that one out. So, you know, but gangs operate under the thing that they force somebody to kill or armed robber or something so that they have committed a crime and all they can turn to is the gang. There's got to be better ways of addressing that than just mass incarceration. I think that most gang members are the victim here. They're being told lies. They are committing crimes at the behest of someone else so that they can be a part of the gang, and then a lot of them realize that, well, the gang is only out for itself. It's not out for them at all. So when people are sucked into these gangs, should we be treating them like criminals if someone else put them up to even murdering somebody? Is there a way to rehabilitate people like that? You know? If they're not really, you know, if they do something and then they are traumatized by the mayhem they committed and they want to quit, shouldn't we do things to encourage them to return to society and be good citizens? So So, I think a lot of things can be done in the area of incarceration to reduce the amount of people we put in prison, because all of them don't belong there. We need better laws. We need not to have so many witch hunts. We incarcerate more people than Communist China. Now think about this. Communist China is a very oppressive country. It has more people than we do. And it has a lot of jails. And a lot of people being incarcerated. So that's saying a lot. Here we are, a smaller country in population, and we have more people in jail than China does? We should be looking at this and being appalled. We should be looking at this and saying something is not right here, because why are we putting so many people in jail? And a lot of it is drug charges. And a lot of it is mentally ill people. In 1980, Reagan decided that people should not be in mental institutions because of abuses that were widespread in the mental health system. Unfortunately, this is going to happen whenever you have a vulnerable population. That's why you have a lot of scandals in young kids in coaching. That's why you have a lot of it in the Boy Scouts. That's why you have a lot of teachers that get in trouble for being too familiar with students, because whenever there is a vulnerable population, bad people are going to be attracted to that population. And you're going to have things. But the solution to that problem was not just simply closing all the mental institutions. Reagan was hoping that Congress would put things in place in the communities so that people could get care in their communities. I think that's still a valid thing. But the funding was never appropriated. So the part of it to close the mental institutions went through, but nothing to help these people stay on their feet once they were out. And some of them, a minority of mentally ill, are dangerous to themselves and others. They need to be institutionalized. They don't need to be out where they can threaten and coerce other people. And, basically you've got a large population of homeless who are mentally ill. They don't belong on the street. They belong in institutions, which we took from them. So we need to take mental illness more seriously as a societal ill that we have. We need to take care of these people and make sure that they get the mental health care that they need, because they're not getting in prison. They're just being held until they die, basically. It's not right. If somebody's committed a heinous crime, yeah, they need to be behind bars. But the perception is that all people in jail have done heinous things and need to be punished for the rest of their lives, and that's just not true. We have a lot of people sitting in jail for years on relatively minor crimes. We need to be going after the big people in drugs. We don't need to be incarcerating people who sell drugs to finance their drug habit. A lot of people who are addicted do things that later they're very ashamed of. But do they need to be dragging around that prison record for the rest of their lives because of a short time when they were teenage, when they went a little wild? And these laws are keeping them from rejoining society. We need to look at jail as not just a keeping place for undesirables. We need to look at it as a place of rehabilitation. It used to be that people could get degrees while they were sitting in jail. They've cut a lot of financial aid for that. Why? There's been such a push to strip people of their rights. If they go to jail, they're a non-person anymore. A lot of it is racially motivated. And if you think that race is not an issue, you need to look at some studies by places like RAND and Kaiser Family Foundation. These places look at the ills in society, and they do studies to see how prevalent discrimination is and how it affects people. If you don't know anybody who's a person of color, maybe you need to get to know a person who's a person of color and see that they bleed red just like you do. They have trials that you don't have. If you're white, you have white privilege. People are more likely to believe you. If you get arrested, people are more likely to help you if you are mistakenly arrested. If you are a person of color, you can be arrested for nothing, because a lot of the white racist organizations in this country love to recruit former military and others to go become policemen and take out their racist views on the innocent. And it happens a lot. If you know a black person, you know that they're a lot more likely to be arrested than you do for not doing anything wrong. And this is a concept that is hard for a lot of white people, and I'm white, it's hard for a lot of people in my societal place to believe that there is systemic racism going on, but believe me, it's a big problem. And I hear it all the time from my black friends. And they're credible. They're good people. But in a lot of black communities, a lot of members of the community have criminal records, not because they were crooks, but because maybe they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or their friends did something and they got caught, or they didn't do anything wrong at all. They were just in a place and the police decided to try to put a charge on them. A lot of them were able to disprove charges, but the fact that they were picked up by the police hurts their reputation. In this country, we should be believing that people are innocent until proven guilty. And if you realize that it's not unusual for black people to be afraid of the police and have troubles with the police, because the police, a lot of them, have white racial troubles. It's easier for them to believe that a crime is taking place when it's really not. We need to screen police officers for white racism and not let them be police officers if they truly believe that people of other races are inferior. You know, how many grieving relatives of mentally ill or physically handicapped people have seen their relatives be arrested for no reason because they act funny? You know, if someone has had a bad head injury, they might act funny and they might be more likely to be arrested because they don't act as the police expect. And not to say that the police are bad. You know, I'm sure that most police officers join the force with good intentions. They want to make the place safer for everybody. But it's not making it safer for people of color, many of whom are afraid to call the police if they are being robbed or assaulted in some way. And when they do call the police, maybe they're more likely to be arrested for something that they didn't do because, oh, they must be a troublemaker because they're in trouble. No, I don't buy that. We need to protect people, disabled people of all walks of life, including the mentally ill. We need to protect their basic human rights. Criminals should have basic human rights. You shouldn't have people, you know, in China, prisoners who may not have done anything, they just spoke out against the government and they're there, they may be sleep deprived to go play video games. Now you might think, oh, I'm playing video games. But they train them to run bots to steal items from other players' accounts. They train them to try to get people to reveal their account passwords. They sell services that are illegal that, you know, before World of Warcraft, for example, started selling game gold to individuals, there was a business that amounted to billions of dollars just dealing in WoW gold, not even other games. It's a huge industry in China to get money that is US dollars. You know, they can have their prisoners stay up all night playing games, and they don't care if they die of exhaustion, because that's what can happen. I saw a documentary from Deutsche Welle, which is the German external service. It used to be that before the days of the internet, countries would give broadcasts in many different languages on shortwave radio, and you could tune these in and hear about the news in that country, and they would also have news from your country. And for some countries, like China, it's, you know, the only way they can hear about what's going on in their country, because their country is oppressive. Communist countries don't like for their dirty work to get out in the public eye. So, you know, external services started as like Radio Free Europe for Eastern Europe, to let people know the truth and what was going on, and, you know, how the fight was going in their country. now we have the internet, so the shortwave stations are still out there and they're still important, but they don't get as many listeners as they used to, because you can get it on the internet now and you don't have to put up with fading signals or whatnot. But it's important to realize that sometimes a news service from another country knows more about our country than we do. That sounds counterintuitive, but a lot of our news services are owned by people with political interests, so you're going to get a different point of view from that news outlet. Like Newsmax, they don't really deal in fact, they deal in fear, opinions, and they disguise opinions as news. Yellow journalism has always been around, but it's rampant right now. Where you get your news is going to color your entire world. So I'm careful where I get my news. So I listen to CNN, I listen to PBS, that's our external service, public broadcasting. I listen to BBC, that's the UK's outlet for news, their external service. You know, you've got all these places that have news, and Deutsche Welle is a very good source of news, and they have wonderful documentaries. And I was watching one on how North Korea launders money so that they can run their nuclear programs. So they have these sweatshops where they work people literally to death and exhaustion, making fashion label clothes for us. There are factories in a lot of countries where North Korean citizens are working and slaving away. They don't get to keep very much money at all to give to their families, and their families are basically held hostage so that they can make clothes for the wealthy in this country. So the next time you're thinking about picking up a label brand of clothing, think about that there might be Uyghur labor from China, there might be North Korean labor from those poor people. And the people are innocent, it's the government is corrupt. The leaders of North Korea just want money in their pockets. So, you know, you've got that situation where they're brainwashing their people and mistreating them, not giving them basic human rights of sleep and food. They're starving them, and they've got all these crooked businesses to launder money so that the leadership of North Korea can get rich. It's very sad. And there should be more news about this. You know. So that's my 2 cents worth. Our problems in this country are just a mirror of what's going on around the world. And to me, it's a sign that Jesus is coming back very soon. We have too much of the world that's just gone a little crazy and not really, you know, countries not taking their citizens' health and happiness at heart. It's really sad. I feel bad for people in other countries. There was a wonderful Chinese lady in my church who was giving my daughter piano lessons for free because I couldn't afford them. And she came to my door crying one day. She said that the government was holding her family hostage. She was in here studying the organ. She was getting a master's degree in organ from BYU. And one day she got a letter that said, pack your bags, come back to China. And no explanation, but they said if she did not return, that they would do bad things to her family. So she had to go back. But bless her heart, she was really enjoying living over here, and she didn't want to go back. But she had to go back for her family. You do not know the trials of people of other nationalities until you get to know some of them. And then sometimes you see in no uncertain terms what it's like to live in another country. You know, I've talked to Europeans that like their country better than ours, and that's fine. That's fine. You know, you probably have more of an affinity for where you grew up than you do where you are now. You know, if you're in a different place. If you've lived in the same place all your life, then you probably want to stay there. You know, you might get curious about other places, but the familiar is easier for us than the unknown. And moving to a new place is the unknown. So, you know, I hope that talking about these things will help people to understand that it's no picnic to be born with a handicap or acquire a handicap. And it's no picnic to have to live in a normal world when you have a disability that makes it hard to be normal. So we have a problem in this country. We don't have enough people to do our jobs. People are putting shingles out all over the place. We're hiring, but they're not getting enough people to apply for those jobs. Part of it is that our workforce is just plain down from the death toll in COVID. Another reason is that a lot of people are afraid to go back, or they need to help their children and maybe their skills have grown cold. They can't get the jobs they used to have. They used to say for data processing, and I was a computer repair person, if you were out of the field 6 months, you might as well forget it, because if your skills aren't current, they're worthless. Well, I was out 6 months to have my daughter, and I ended up having to just get a library assistant position because I could not find a computer position, private industry or government. So I did not have a way to go back to the previous level of computer job that I had. Sad but true, and it happens all the time. And a lot of women that have quit the workforce to stay home and take care of their kids, you know, 5 years later they want to get back in the workforce and they're having to start from scratch. That's not right either, but, you know, unemployment is a complicated thing. It looks simple from the outside, but it's really not. It's not an easy subject. Economists have to learn all sorts of things to be able to analyze it, because there's so many factors in play that make unemployment numbers more complicated than they look. it's like, oh, just count the people who are jobless. But you got to consider, are they on unemployment because they've been out of work and they were fired? Are they out of work because they are taking care of a relative who's sick? And that job usually falls to women. There are very few men who will quit their jobs and go take care of a loved one. Usually they leave it up to a woman in the family. And they may provide money, but not the physical support. There are others who work and give the physical support too, and kudos to them. But if you look at what happens with the majority, it is difficult to put your finger on, jobs are up, but yet people are trying to hire and they're not getting good employees. Okay, so what's up with that? Well, if you look at the unemployment towards women, women have not regained any ground. Women's unemployment is still at the same high that it was a couple of years ago because of people having to quit their jobs because of COVID, because they've got kids that need extra help with the online school, or they've got family members with disabilities now because of COVID. There's a lot of that. There are people who didn't die of COVID that got handicapped because of it. Because COVID does not just hit the lungs. It also hits the brain, the heart, the liver, the stomach and GI system. There are the skin. There are a lot of people like me who still have skin problems after COVID. That didn't go away. The COVID went away, but these skin problems are still recurring. So, you don't have the same concept after you've been through something like that. Then you start saying, I wonder how many other people have been affected like this, and I hope this won't get worse. That's always in the back of your mind. I've got enough handicaps. I don't need any more. So, it's important to just see that there are handicapped individuals all around you at any given time or place. And if you have more understanding of handicapped people near you, or if you're handicapped and you want to know how to enlighten people, stay tuned to my channel, because I will try to start dialogues about that. Because the first thing is communication. If you have disabilities and you're trying to hide them, that's a decision I'm not going to say that I should make for you. That's between you and whoever your health professionals are as to how much you reveal. There is a stigma from coming out and saying, well, I'm handicapped. You don't look handicapped, you look healthy. What about all the diabetics in this country? Diabetes is a definite disability. So, and you think, well, they just have to avoid sugar and stay on a special diet. It's very complicated. If you know somebody with diabetes, you know what they go through, or I hope you know. Because it's really hard to keep your blood sugar regulated if your Isle of Langerhans and your pancreas is damaged and does not produce insulin the way it should. if your body produces some insulin, you're in better shape than somebody whose body produces no insulin. But every time you eat, you've got to consider, what's my insulin level? What's my sugar level? How much sugar is in the snack that I'm eating? And will it run my blood sugar up even if it doesn't have sugar in it? You realize that certain foods that are not sweet will run your blood sugar up if you're diabetic? There's a lot that your pancreas does for you that in people with an impaired pancreas, so that they don't have the amounts of insulin they should, or they don't have the insulin period that they should, they can die from eating the wrong thing. It's quite a burden to live with. So, you know, a lot of things are disabilities that you figure, well, oh, I just have to live with that. Well, having to live with that is a disability. It means you don't have as much of a leg up. Maybe part of your job requires that you have a certain image or smell a certain way, or, you know, there's a lot of company cultures that expect you to be at work every day, no excuses. Excuse me. So you want to have a little empathy for people that have more trials than you do. And maybe they don't have more trials than you do. Maybe you've been through a whole bunch of stuff and you've got your traumas and your emotional baggage, and that's valid. I consider that a disability myself. You know, when you've been through major life events that are traumatic, like divorce, you know, how many people are divorced in this country? Divorce is a big deal. It affects your children's mental health if you have them, and it affects your mental health. So, you know, we probably have more handicapped individuals in this country than we really have stats for. The point I'm making here is that we should have greater understanding of disabilities and what it means to live with one. Not only from the standpoint that, well, I've got this relative and they have so-and-so, or my child has this disability and I'm worried about their future, or my grandmother is in the hospital and they don't think she's going to be able to live independently anymore. Everybody, if they live long enough, will either know somebody with a handicap or require one or two themselves, or more. So it's important to understand disability because it's a fluid thing. It can happen to anyone. And once it does happen, a lot of people play it down because they're embarrassed. They are worried about not being able to do the things that they used to be able to do, and they're in dread of somebody asking them to do something that they used to be able to do but now can't. And I run into that all the time in gaming. Every time somebody invites me to a group, I'm like, oh boy, they're in for it. I'm having a bad day today. I don't know if I can do this. And, you know, oftentimes I hesitate to join their group because I'm afraid that they're going to do something that they need all the members to score highly. And if I can't do that particular day, I'm letting them down. I was on the blue team last night in a group activity, and I did awful. I was 12th place. We won all three of them, but I wasn't able to help that, and I felt terrible. You know, the three people that stuck in, I think one person quit, and they may have quit because they saw how poorly I was performing and like, man, we can't win. So they dropped out. I mean, that's nothing against them, but I felt bad. I felt bad because here I was on this team. I wasn't performing very well. And even though the others excelled and we still won, if that person had not dropped out, they would have won too. But just the fact that here I was doing my very best, and my best wasn't nearly good enough. It's going to make me think twice before saying yes to a group. Although people in this game are really nice, I have not had anybody have harsh words with me or, over my poor performance. Nobody says anything bad. I haven't been on Discord with them either. In this game, chat is severely limited to just a few phrases, but even in those few phrases, you could put out an insult. But I've not had anybody put out anything negative when I've, even on Force-a-thon, failed miserably. If I'm having a bad day, it's hard, but I haven't had anybody be mean to me in this game yet. So I'm really fortunate that I've got a bunch of friends in this game and they're all inviting me to groups. It's nice. I just feel that little bit of intimidation that they don't know what they're in for. I don't know if I can do this. And sometimes I can and sometimes I can't. So it just depends. And you think that once somebody learns the game, that they're going to be consistently good. And that's a fallacy, because when you have disabilities, you might be dynamite one day and the worst player on the team the next. So, I always try my best, but sometimes my thumb just doesn't cooperate. So, I can try as hard as I want to, but sometimes I just can't excel, and it drives me crazy. I was an extremely good student in school, learned very quickly, didn't have any problems, with my schoolwork, much except algebra. But the fact that I never know nowadays if I'm going to remember something I've learned in the game. And I might do the same wrong things over and over. There have been times that I've reached for the brakes instead of the accelerator. That is embarrassing. So, being handicapped is not like being skilled. Sometimes there are people, there's a gentleman that I know who was injured in the Gulf War. He had severe brain injury and only has use of half his body. Yet, if you played with him in a raid, in a dungeon, you would never know the man had any handicaps at all. He plays one-handed, but he is extremely good. Consistently good. And he's got like 4 accounts, and he plays 50 tunes on each of those 4 accounts. I mean, he just plays well all day because it gets his mind off his disability and helps him have some self-esteem. Because the poor guy, he really has a rough life. So, there's a lot of people in our boat that turn to video games because sometimes you can do really well at them. And, Not all people are inconsistent like me. I never know when I turn the game on how I'm going to be. If I'm going to be jumping off of things and crashing, or, whatever game it is. If I'm going to be misjudging jumps or misjudging where the vehicle is, or, all those things. I never know how my performance is going to be. There are a lot of disabled people. Their disabilities are pretty consistent, and they may have good days and bad days, but they can be consistent despite it. I admire those people because I'm not one of them. But I'm saying it's good to understand disabilities in general, because if you live long enough, you will have a disability. So you might as well learn a bit about us and how we cope. Because one thing about COVID, having to go into isolation was not that big a deal for me, because I'm in isolation every day. Really, I don't see many people. I see my care aide 5 days a week, but I don't really see a lot of people. I don't have close friends who come visit me. So, I live kind of an isolated life, and a lot of seniors do, even if they're not disabled, because, you don't have the energy for going out and doing things, and maybe you don't have a lot of the ability to do things that you once had. So you may not have blatant disabilities, but you may not have the energy of some of your senior friends, and you might not be doing active things like they were doing. And age is a gradual thing. You may not realize how badly your abilities have degraded until something happens. I didn't realize how bad my eyesight was getting when I had cataracts. I had to stop driving for a while because I couldn't see the road signs. I couldn't tell where cars were, and that's dangerous. There were a lot of things that were wrong, and a lot of it went wrong very gradually. So it's not common for people to all of a sudden wake up one morning and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't see well, I need to go to my eye doctor." Most of the time it's that gradual things get to a point that you're spinning and you're adjusting your screen and you're turning up your brightness and you know that's working, and then you go for your checkup and, oh, you've got cataracts. Oh, yeah, I can see where I've had that, so I can believe it, But it takes being diagnosed with the eye doctor before you really see what's going on. Pardon my pun. So, there are a lot of disabilities that can creep up on you. My uncle got glaucoma, and he didn't realize until it was too late to save his eyes that he had a serious problem. It came on so gradually. So you want to think about that disability can happen anytime to anyone of any age. And we're getting more of a population of disabled young people from sports injuries because coaches are not being careful with their bodies. They're telling them, oh, you need to cross-train, you need to do, some sport every season. If you don't give your body a chance to rest, you are more injury prone. And sports medicine specialists are seeing more and more young people than they ever have before because of sports programs that cross-train. So I'm not saying cross-training itself is a bad thing, but I'm saying you should have your doctor in on that when you start a sports activity And you should listen to your doctors about when, if you get injured, how long you should stay out, and be careful of overzealous physical therapists. You only get one body, and if you've already got arthritis from an injury, and you will get arthritis from any injury, your coach may be telling you to suck it up, Buttercup, but if you're hurting constantly, it drains your energy and it makes everything harder. So you don't want to re-injure yourself and make it 10 times worse. So there comes a point that you have to let no pain, no gain be a thing of the past and worry about, okay, this activity hurts. I should go to the doctor and have it checked out. If you've got chronic pain, you need to be in touch with your doctor and seeing what can be done about it. You may not want to take pain medicine. I chose not to. I am working on distraction now, so I play a lot of video games. It distracts me from this constant pain that never goes away and usually doesn't go below a 6. So I have chronic pain and I don't show it because I hide it. I'm very good at hiding it. I can hide it from my doctor. I try not to because it works against my being diagnosed, but right now I am pretty much holding my pain at bay with gaming and the other things that I do. So, I handle it the way I handle it. Other people might consider pain medicine, and there are pros and cons to pain meds, but you shouldn't rule it out. You should talk to your doctor about it. I just got tired of the side effects and said, I'm going to quit this. I've found something that works better. For me, non-drug interventions, just as self-distraction, works very well. So, that's up to the individual. And if you've got a child with chronic pain, then as a parent, you're going to worry about, what if they get addicted. But doctors have ways of reducing pain medicine gradually and ending the addiction. So you don't have to worry about that so much. If you're taking medicine the way the doctors prescribed it, you don't have anything to worry about. You can still get addicted, yes, but the doctor can help you. And he's trying not to let you get addicted in the first place. The reason addiction is such an epidemic in this country is because people think, oh, if one does well, 2 should do even better, and 3 might, really help, One of the sad things about pain control is you cannot get 100% pain relief. If you're getting 100% pain relief, you're in big danger of addiction, and doctors know this, so they will not give you 100% pain relief. And there are people who insist, I'm in pain, I need this medicine, and you need to give it to me. But if you're going to argue with your doctor about how much pain medicine is enough, that's not a good thing, because your doctor's not going to give you 100% pain relief. They're going to work with you to try to get an acceptable level of pain relief. But you don't want to get addicted. But if you do get addicted, the doctor can help you to end the addiction. So you just got to be careful with prescription medicine. It's prescription because it can hurt you. So don't take extra. Don't take it more often than the prescription says, because in the course of a month, if you're taking it more often than the doctor has prescribed, you can get addicted. And a lot of people are shocked by this. It's like, well, why did that doctor give it to me if he knew I could get addicted? Usually the risks are right in the literature. So you need to read the paperwork that comes with your medicines so you know the risks. And if you don't want to take those risks, talk to your doctor. Maybe there's another medicine with less risk. Although they tend to start off with the medicines with less risk, depending on how bad things are. If you're in the hospital and you're having that kind of pain, you don't want to die, and you can die. Your body can go into shock, and you can be in very bad shape from not taking pain. So pain medicine serves its purpose, and there's kinds of pain meds you only get in the hospital because of the risk of addiction. But if you take it the way you're supposed to, the risk is low of getting addicted. So pain medicine itself is not a bad thing, but it's a trade-off because every medicine has side effects, and some of the side effects are just not worth it. So, you are the one with your doctor who has to decide whether this is worth it or not. And a lot of people have the issue of, how are you going to pay for this medicine? Maybe it helps me, but I can't pay for it. So a lot of drug companies, most of the drug companies have what's called an indigent program. You don't have to be totally indigent to qualify for these programs. They're based on income. So if you can't afford a medicine that your doctor wants you to take, and you've weighed the risks and you want to try it, but money is the thing standing in your way, ask your doctor about programs. Excuse me. There are programs that you can get on without getting on welfare or anything like that. You just have your doctor fill out a form for you and send it in, and you prove your income with your pay stubs and everything. That's all that's required. So don't be afraid of that either. Don't say, well, I'm not poor, I don't deserve that. Well, if you need medicine and can't afford it, yes, you do deserve it. Don't feel guilty about applying for stuff. If your income's too high, they'll say no. That's all. It's not broadcast on the 6 o'clock news, so nobody has to know about it, that you asked for it, but you and your doctor, and that's confidential. So don't worry about it. If you need a medicine and can't afford it, look into alternative ways to pay for it. And it might just be that you get that medicine for free if you qualify. So then you can take your medicine and you've decided that it's right for you. So, there's no guilt there. There's no stigma about asking for help if you need it to pay for medicine. I get extra help on my medications. I have several. I'm on about 7 medications at the present time. So, yeah, if I had to pay full price for all of them, I couldn't do it. Oops, I went too far. Oh, my allergies are getting to me. But anyway, I've talked long enough. I hope y'all have enjoyed it, and let me see, who's on? I should have been looking at this. So if I go down to my chat and show viewers. Oh. Discord for small streamers. Hello. Well, I'm a small streamer. Thank you for joining me. I'm glad that you joined me tonight. I hope that you enjoyed listening to me, and I hope that I said something useful or that Chrissy said something useful. And I'm hoping that I will get more listeners who have handicaps and want to talk about them. So if you know anybody who wants to talk about disabilities, if they don't want to show their face, they don't have to, but they could join me on my live stream and talk about it, and it would help other people. This live stream will go on YouTube tonight, and then other people can see it. So my care aide wasn't too wild about getting on my live stream, but I explained to her that this could help other people, and she's all about helping people. So she talked to me, and she didn't show her face on camera, and she was okay with that. So I would be very willing to interview other people talking about handicaps too. But in the meantime, this is Granny Handicap, aka Dennis Cole, saying good night and thank you for being with me, and I hope you'll return. And if you don't want to chat with me, that's fine. I don't care. If you're getting something out of my live cast, then you're welcome to be here. So just want to make that clear, that anybody who wants to watch my stream doesn't have to take part if they don't want to. I believe in freedom of expression for everybody, and that includes the freedom not to chat. So have a good night, and I hope to see y'all again. Don't let your handicaps get you down if you have them. Remember that your can-do list may grow, and your can't-do list may grow, and your can-do list may shrink. But concentrate on that can-do list. Enjoy what you can do, because that's the trick to handling any disability, is concentrate on what you can do and let the stuff you can't do anymore just go by. It hurts, but that's part of the grief process that you go through when you get disabled. You have to let go of certain things. And at first there may be denial, and it's like, oh, I can do things as well as any normal person. And as you go through the process, you learn to accept that there are some things you can't do. You may not be to that point yet. You may have moved past that. But part of grief is to be angry, why am I in this boat? Or depressed, oh, I can't have a future. Yes, you can. You just got to work through the stages of grief and get to the point that you're okay with yourself in your disabled state, whatever that may be. And you find that there are some things you can do, some things you can't do, but you got to keep a positive attitude, because a negative attitude will kill you. There are physical effects from your body from being depressed all the time and being anxious all the time and worrying that you're not good enough. You got to get to a point where you say, okay, I'm disabled, but I'm still a good person. I can still do some things that I want to do. There are some things I want to do that I can't do, but that's okay. And I may try them to see if I still can't do them. Maybe I can gain a skill and be able to do that thing that I can't do today. So there's always hope, and there's always a bright future. As long as your heart's pumping and you are alive, you can improve your situation. You can improve your quality of life. Sometimes it may be getting disability equipment. You know, a wheelchair would be a great thing if I had a power chair again. I have a manual chair. Somebody has to push me because I don't have the strength to push myself. I wish I had a power chair, but, you know, I can get one someday. If we make the trip to Fodak in Atlanta, you know, I can get on the waiting list and get a power chair. So it's not like I absolutely can't, but I can't do it right now. So it's okay. There's always going to be those things on your bucket list that you want to do and you can't do right now. Maybe you're frustrated because you can't do it right now. But look at the beauty around you. There's always something beautiful to look at. There's always a bright side to things. So if you can keep your attitude positive, you can overcome your disability better or live with it better, whatever your challenge is. So that's what I want to leave you with tonight. Don't let your disabilities get you down. You are just as good as the person next to you who hasn't got a disability in the world. You just have to try to keep positive, because this will improve everything about your quality of life. So keep a good attitude. That's my message tonight. So I'm going to sign off. See you tomorrow night. And I hope your week is a pleasant one. Good night. I'm going over to Twitch and I'm going to turn off my live stream now. Good night.